Good evening, welcome to our August 13th meeting of the Milton Board of Selectmen. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We'll go right to item 2, review and approve of minutes. There are currently no minutes to approve. Just to confirm future meeting dates, the board will meet again on Monday, August 27, 2018 at 7 p.m. here. Item 4 is citizen speak. If I have anyone for citizen speak, if they just come up to the table, state your name. Mr. Shea, I recognize you, and just state your name and your address, please.
Dave Shea, 307 Holland Street. I want to ask the board to consider postponing until after the midterm elections, changing the name of this board. My dad worked for Tommy McGee, Speaker McGee, during the Great Speakers Fight of 1984. And one of the lessons that he taught me and has stayed with me my entire life, actually the only thing I remember my dad teaching me was, he, I think, said to me why the subject came up, why he was backing Speaker McGee. And he said it wasn't about Speaker McGee. It was about the institution, the House, the speakership. Before we change it with rules and all that, you got to look at it through the eyes of history and beyond. We've had a Board of Selectmen for 300 years. It's withstood a lot of changes. I've heard the rhetoric from both sides, and I feel we have the Supreme Court on the September 4th. We have a midterm coming up that is going to be passionate, strong points of view. I think it would serve the town in the eyes of history and the community. Wait until December, wait until January. Maybe we could lower the temperature before you change something that's been in existence for 300 years. I don't think we should be doing this lightly. I think it should be thoughtful. I think it should be careful consideration, and the deliberation should withstand the test of history. I question why we're even doing this at all, but I'm probably wrong more than I'm right, and I respect the process. But to put it there before it, given what I've seen and read on Facebook, I think we're going to do more disservice to the town, and by waiting until December and January, we're going to have the quality of debate. One of the reasons why I suggested putting it to the ballot is the lesson from my dad, that you don't change it. It's our institutions of government. We love you in the great time, but we need your strength in the tough times. And I remember the speakers fight. Speaker McGee lost. They changed the rules to make it more inclusive, to make it more democratic. 6 years later, they put the rules back the way they had it under McGee for the most part. I would caution us to change a name that I've always viewed it with respect, reverence, and I would urge you to consider at least putting it off until after the midterms, and let's bring out the best of them as you have this debate. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dave. Anyone else for citizen speak? Please come forward and state your name and address.
Thank you. My name is Kathy Doyle. My address is 1047 Metropolitan Ave in Milton. I'm here with a request to have the town consider leveraging and taking advantage of some of the incentives that are around for solar. Our state is probably the 4th most progressive state in incentivizing everyone to put solar where it can be logically placed. And our town has a number of different sites that I have worked with many of the folks in town to identify and to maybe even run an analysis showing what is possible. And there are opportunities for us to leverage these incentives, and I'd like to see it happen sooner rather than later. The incentives reward early adopters, and they go down as time passes. We have several sites where we could have put solar many years ago, and we didn't get to it. And those sites are still available and viable, and I'd like for the town to consider doing an analysis on what's possible and figuring out how we can integrate more solar to bring clean, local, renewable power to our town. I have a business I've volunteered my time and my energy over the years to help the town figure out how to leverage these incentives. I'm happy to continue to do some of that, and I think our town is very well positioned in a number of instances to do something with solar. There are a number of sites. I don't know if I should mention them now, but I will work with whomever I'm instructed to work with to get there and try to figure out what to do.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You were at town meeting as well. Were you not at town meeting?
I was a
You
while
were?
ago, yeah.
Yes.
I worked with Bill Clark and Bill Ritchie to replace the solar that was on Town Hall a while ago. I volunteered to do that project.
Came off in the
with them.
snowstorm about 3 years ago. I was
Yeah.
there when I remember the day
yeah.
well.
So I helped replace it with a new
Sounds-
system, and
It's not gonna fall off again, is it?
it is
All
not
right,
going to
okay.
fall off again. I pretty much guarantee you of that.
Okay.
But in the meanwhile, right now, our state has many incentives, and I have a business that helps other institutions and companies leverage these incentives, and I hate seeing them pass our town by while I'm helping all these other people take advantage of them. So I'd
Okay.
like to advocate that we do something. What's the next step? Do I meet with you again, or?
Yeah, I think presenting to me, I had met Ms. Doyle during my first 6 or 8 months in Town Hall, and she has a very interesting locations and some proposals where we can improve our solar footprint. I had considered some land in town.
Or like a
Former
small
town
solar farm.
administrator Cronin enlightened me about some of the hoops we would have to jump through with that. But I think there are several opportunities that Ms. Doyle has identified that are worthy of a discussion going forward.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for what you've done so far as well.
Appreciate
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
the opportunity. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else for citizen speak? Come, Mr. Walker.
This will be quick, just I need the props. My name is Kevin Walker.
Why don't you wait till you sit
Oh,
down,
sorry.
because you gotta be on the microphone.
I'm just trying to multitask.
You wanna flip that, it's upside down, you
Yeah,
wanna
that's
flip it around?
Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good
My
evening.
name is Kevin Walker. Recently, I've been copying
Why
you.
don't you give your address as well?
Oh, yeah,
Just so
sure.
everyone at home knows.
1776 Canton Ave, built, been there about 13 years.
Thank you.
I've been copying you on some emails, trying to ensure that the process for the special permit, pre-special permit for the Carberry development, that it should go according to the bylaw and to what's right. Just to put a little perspective, my home here is right here, and that's the proposed development. And this is my house that I've worked my whole life for. So I've been copying you because at first, the Historic Commission, it was going to be, it seemed like a quickie, but Chairman O'Donoghue gave me the time.
O'Donnell, Steve O'Donnell.
I'm sorry,
Okay, O'Donnell.
my apologies. And they're putting together what I think is a comprehensive list of what should be included. I'm here because I believe, and I'm going to bring this to the planning board, that there should just be a full peer review of the project when it is submitted. Full architectural and engineering. So far, I got an email a few days ago, Mr. Dolly telling me I got everything that you're going to get. It's all the neighbors, and today he's going to resubmit documents. if this goes in next to my house, it'll destroy my property value. This is Woodmere. Drive down there and look at the historic preservation, none. The Secretary of the Interior has a preservation guideline. It's not gonna just go through. You know I'm challenging the bylaw, okay? That's not why I'm here. I'm here to make sure that the bylaw, as written, these 2 full pages have a lot of detail. You set a very high bar, which I'm very grateful for, but it's not gonna be 8.5 by 11 and no details. So I ask that you continue to follow the project, that you read the emails that you copied on, or I wouldn't copy them on you, if I didn't think it was pertinent. And one thing I have to take exception to, recently, at a planning board meeting, Mr. Clark made a statement that I'm going around freedom of information, he's, not doing this, and I mean, watch it for yourself. Aren't I entitled to get the information associated with this project? I mean, I almost fell over. I'm not the other guy. I'm the guy that wants to protect my property value. That's all. Right here. Right there. And this is what the submittal was, that Mr. Dawley said, this is what everybody get. I do government construction work. I develop in Boston. A dog and pony show is not going to cut it. And I just want everyone to do their jobs. Look at the details. Just drive over there. When the market changes, and it will, we'll see what happens to those $1 million condos. And that's what's going to happen to my property if and when this does go through. And of course, I'm going to do everything I can so that it doesn't. But if it is, it's going to be built according to the bylaw. And lastly, the town currently has 43 acres on the books for these parcels. 43 acres. So he said there was a discrepancy earlier. There's some reason one of the maps is blocked.
Just a quick, who said there was a discrepancy?
Mr. Dawley early on said. So why, where's the rest of the land? Why, they've been undertaxed? We're doing our own research. And the last thing I just want to say, to show you how disconnected the Department of Planning and Community Development is that this map on this side is what Mr. Clark presented. And if you look over in the right-hand corner there, he circled 5 areas where this bylaw would meet. It was never given to the planning board, nothing. Well, you know who lives in 5? Mr. Whiteside lives in 5. I'll just hand out what Mr. Whiteside emailed us early. And this isn't about, the magic bullet. I think there's a few lawyers here. There's no such thing. This is about holding people accountable to do the right thing. And I was raised to do the right thing. And that's the way I'm raising my kids. And so I'm not that other guy. I'm the guy that's trying to protect my property value. If my property value wasn't being affected, you think I'd be here? Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Before is there anyone else here for citizen speak tonight? I just want to give Mr. Walker a chance to get his. If you just leave it, we'll hand it along.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank
Have a good night.
you, too. Thank you very much. Just in case. Okay.
Good night, Chief.
Actually, don't forget his glasses, those are his glasses. Okay, I'm gonna go to item 5, which is discussion approval on the appointment of an interim member of the Board of Assessors, and I invite our esteemed colleagues here from the board to join us. You can all join us, and also Mr. Bushway as well. Just bring a couple extra chairs. And just for everyone at home, if you can just introduce yourselves, and then, floor is yours.
Bill Bennett, Chairman of the Board.
Brian Cronin, Board of Assessors.
Bob Reitz, I'm a candidate for consideration.
Bob Bushway, Chief Appraiser.
Thank you very much. Bill, the floor is yours.
So on July 16th, we had a vacancy open up with Jim Henderson resigning. He moved out of town. So we were required to evaluate candidates. We had a couple of candidates submit a resume and a letter of intent. We reviewed them, and as a board on July 19th, we voted unanimously to ask Mr. Bob Reitz to be appointed to the board. He's agreed to do that. Bob currently serves on the Board of Registrars for the town. He was asked to do that by Sue Galvin and Jim Mullen. He's a town meeting member, and he has extensive experience in commercial lending and real estate valuation. So I think we decided he'd be a great candidate for the board. We'd like to get your approval.
Very good. Any questions? Anyone before, anyone? Anything else, Joe? Anybody else? We're good?
I think we need a voice.
Oh, yeah, we're ready for that. I'm trying to be receptive here to any other comments that you might want to make. Do we have any comments from any of the board members before we have a motion here for approval on the appointment of an interim member?
Does anybody have any questions for Bob?
I don't have a question, I just have a comment. I think Bob would be a great addition to the Board of Assessors, and I'm glad he's been willing to stand up and take on this role, so thank you, Bob.
Did you tell them how much the pay was?
We didn't go down that road
Only
yet.
kidding. All right, so do I have a motion here? Or can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move to appoint C. Robert Reitz of 222 Highland Street to serve on the Board of Assessors until the April 2019 town election.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Congratulations. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you. Okay, item 6, I'm going to ask the town treasurer, Jim McGough, to join us.
And Mr. Chairman, I'm going to be recused on
okay,
this
yeah.
because I work with bond counsel.
Always scare me when you say that.
How are you, Jim?
Okay, it's all good news with this bond. We retained our AAA rating. We went out to bond on August 6th. We got 8 bids, which is 4 more than people usually get. The winner of the bid was Janie, Montgomery, and Scott. Total interest cost on that bond is $2.616384. They ranged from that to $2.719342. The interest cost on the bond is $3,049,022.03. We are receiving a premium back of $1,043,738.95 for the net interest cost of $2,005,283.08. Any questions?
We have a long motion here. So why don't we, maybe we can split up, maybe the first, whoever makes the motion could read through page 1, and then whoever seconds can read through the rest of the numbers, and then I'll finish it in the beginning, the final paragraphs, if that's, is that all right? That make it easier? Everyone doesn't have to read the whole thing, so, could I have a motion on this, on the bond approval?
When they start over here. Like chronologically, the years go down, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like this is one row, and then that's the second row.
So you want to read by row?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, okay, so, why don't you read the first row, and then I'll do the second row, and then, or you can do the second row, and then I'll do the end there, the last paragraphs. Is that all right?
Sure,
All right.
sure, okay. I make a motion that the sale of the $11,020,000 general obligation municipal purpose loan of 2018 bonds of the town dated August 28th, 2018, commonly referred to hereafter as the bonds, to Jenny Montgomery Scott LLC at the price of $12,063,738.95, and accrued interest is hereby approved and confirmed. The bond shall be payable on August 1st of the years and in the principal amounts and bear interest at the respective rates as follows. Year 2019, amount $1,325,000 at an interest rate of 5%. Year 2020, in the amount of $1,320,000 at an interest rate of 5%. Year 2021, in the amount of $1,315,000 at an interest rate of 5%. Year 2022, in the amount of $950,000 at an interest rate of 5%. Year 2023, in the amount of $695,000 at an interest rate of 5%. Year 2024, in the amount of $645,000 at an annual interest rate of 5%. Year 2025, in the amount of $640,000 at an interest rate of 5%. Year 2026, in the amount of $640,000 at an interest rate of 5%. Year 2027, in the amount of $630,000 at an interest rate of 5%. Year 2028, in the amount of $450,000 at an annual interest rate of 5%. You want to pick up 2029, Mike?
Yep, sure. I'll second the motion, and I'll pick up with year 2029, the amount $390,000 at an interest rate of 4%. Year 2030, the amount $390,000 at an interest rate of 4%. Year 2031, $390,000 at an interest rate of 3%. Year 2032, $345,000 at an interest rate of 3%. Year 2033, $255,000 at an interest rate of 3%. Year 2034, $125,000 at an interest rate of 3.125%. Year 2035, $125,000 at an interest rate of 3.25%. And I'm wondering if that's a typo, the 3.125, because it's the same interest rate at 3.25. So we just might want to double check year 2034.
It's in the prospectus there.
Oh, okay.
What year was it, Mike? 2030?
Yeah, it's right.
Yeah, because it is right,
Yep.
3125?
Yep,
Yes,
yep,
okay.
that's correct, because there's 2034.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that. So year 2035, $125,000 at the rate of 3.125%. Year 2035, $125,000 at 3.25%. Year 2036, $130,000 at 3.25%. Year 2037, $130,000 at 3.25%. And year 2038, $130,000 at 3.375%.
That in connection with the marketing and sale of the bonds, the preparation and distribution of a notice of sale and preliminary official statement dated July 27th, 2018, and the final official statement dated August 6th, 2018, the official statement, in parentheses, each in such form as may be approved by the town treasurer, be and hereby are ratified, confirmed, approved, and adopted, that the bond shall be subject to redemption at the option of the town upon such terms and conditions as set forth in the official statement. That the town treasurer and the board of selectmen be and hereby are authorized to execute and deliver a continuing disclosure undertaking in compliance with SEC Rule 15C 2-12 in such form as may be approved by bond counsel to the town, which undertaking shall be incorporated by reference in the bonds for the benefit of the holders of the bonds from time to time. That we authorize and direct the treasurer to establish post-issuance federal tax compliance procedures in such form as the treasurer and bond counsel deem sufficient, or if such procedures are currently in place, to review and update said procedures in order to monitor and maintain the tax-exempt status of the bonds. That each member of the Board of Selectmen, the town clerk, and the town treasurer be and hereby are authorized to take any and all such actions and execute and deliver such certificates, receipts, or other documents as may be determined by them, or any of them, to be necessary or convenient to carry into effect the provisions of the foregoing votes. Seeing this has been, motion has been made and seconded, do we have any further discussion? Go ahead.
I just have one question. Jim, I just want to confirm, I think this is the case from reading, but I just want to confirm that of the 8 bidders, the Janney Montgomery Scott bid was the lowest, and will be the lowest cost to the town of the money.
That's correct, yeah.
And none of us will be here in 2036, 2038. Hearing, any other comments? Good?
Good, thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous.
And there's about 20 signatures needed from each and every one of you, so.
Okay.
I hope you have a nice, comfortable pen to
Yeah,
write.
we do, right here.
And I'm putting
Oh,
Mike
yeah,
in
we'll
charge,
sign.
I'm putting Mike in charge of getting those signatures on every page.
We'll do that tonight. We'll get that done for you.
Thanks, Jim.
All right,
It'll be there in the
thank you.
morning. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay, item number 7, the approval of the 2019 water and sewer rates, and I'd like to call our DPW Director, Chase Berkeley, who I believe has,
Our consultant is here as well.
is consulted with him tonight. Am I correct?
Yep.
Good
Good
evening.
evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for having
Welcome.
us. With me is Toby Feder from the firm Woodard and Curran, who has been analyzing the town's rates for over a decade now, and has a complex rate model that they use facts and figures to determine them. So just a couple of general comments before I let Toby speak on the specifics. As far as the timing of water and sewer costs, the MWRA gives us what they call an assessment, which is our bill. And that assessment is about 1.5 years after the water was actually used. So it's a fixed cost, and we can plan for it, and we know that it won't change. So every month, we get a bill for the exact same amount from the MWRA. So that's the biggest component of our budget for both the water and the sewer. On the water side, it's 53% of our entire budget, and on the sewer, it's even larger, it's 72%. So that drives where the rates need to go in order to raise that revenue. And so the tricky part can sometimes be that we're paying a fixed cost and applying a variable season that we haven't gone through yet against that rate per gallon. So in other words, we need to guess where our water sales will be and plan the rate to raise that. And we've had a very good track record with that. But of course, the weather is the unknown factor, and it drives how much water we sell. So there are steps taken to look at historical trends, look at future forecasts, and determine where we think our sales will be and set the rates accordingly. So with that, I'll just let Toby speak to the specifics of this year, and then we're happy to answer any questions you have.
Sure,
Thank
so, as he indicated, we've been doing this for about a decade now, fairly successfully in my mind. Essentially, what we're trying to do at this point, when we look at a utility similar to Milton's water and sewer utilities, where you have fairly level budgets and usages, and you have healthy reserves, is we're effectively trying to set rates in order to raise the amount of money that the town is going to actually spend on water and sewer, inclusive of the MWRA requirements. And so this year, we went through a similar practice to that we've done for years. We took a look at the consumption that was billed in 2018 and built that into the statistical breakdown of what we expect you to sell in the coming year. And from that point, it's basically just trying to level the amount of revenue that the rates will generate in an average year with the expenses that we expect to go out the door based upon the appropriated budgets. And this year, the result of that analysis was that in spite of the fact that your MWRA assessment is going down modestly from last year, we do expect a 1.4% increase on the water rates. Just to clear up any misconception on that, is the primary reason for that is because last year's rates were subsidized because in the preceding fiscal cycle, we had a very dry year. In very dry years, you sell a lot of water. So in the preceding year to last year, so fiscal 17, you billed a lot more and brought in a lot more revenue than you needed. We took a portion of that and basically subsidized last year's rates using a bit of the excess reserves in order to prevent a rate increase last year. So this year, we need to make up for the loss of those funds because they've been expended. On the sewer side, your costs have gone up a little bit, and your consumption continues to decrease modestly. We've planned for that within the rates, and the sewer rates we expect to go, or we recommend to go up by 2.2%. All combined, we put that into basically a series of rate calculations to show what we expect, basically several different classes of ratepayers to pay on an annual basis. And across the board, we would expect that the average water and sewer ratepayer combined would see an overall cost increase of 1.9% in the coming fiscal cycle over that of last year. And the rates, I believe you've seen a copy of the rate report sent out in PDF format. We do have some paper copies if anyone would like one. But in effect, the rate schedules are set out within that report on the final page.
Questions? Go ahead.
Just
Go ahead.
just one, just so I understand, so if the rates are an estimate, does that mean that there's an annual true-up?
No, there's no true-up. So in effect, if we have a really large sales year, say as we did in fiscal 17, the practice of Milton has been to use a portion of the excess reserves that you build up in the preceding fiscal year to subsidize rates a little bit in the next fiscal cycle.
Okay.
But there is no true-up. I mean, true-ups are common when you're talking about large industrial users who are on a calculated bill basis where, well, we figured out that, you know, when the utility comes to the end of the fiscal cycle and they didn't spend $1 million they thought they were going to, under contract, they could be required to pay some of that back. Milton, nor does any other municipal utility that I've ever worked with, do that with average ratepayers. It just becomes, if you have excess revenues, it rolls to a little bit more reserves that you can then set rates with following, or in truth, if you have a very short year, last year was rather tight, you do need to take that into account to plan for, future rate increases, because really, there's nothing we can do to change the majority of your cost structure here. It is, you guys are a pass-through organization, as Chase indicated, for over half of the water bill and almost 3/4 of the sewer bill. So 75% almost of the bill that the average ratepayer pays here, you basically take it in, you keep a pocket in your quarter, or in your pocket, and you send 75 cents, and that quarter is what pays for all of the operations here in the town. Everything else goes directly to the MWRA to pay for their operations and debt service expenses.
Thank you.
So Toby, I'm reading through some of the more detailed analysis. Is it fair to say like most Milton homeowners fall into tier 2?
Tier 2, tier 3, it depends on, really what makes the break is, do you irrigate your yard or not?
Right.
That's what it comes down to.
Okay, and I was curious too, like, about how where you lived in town affected like your water and sewer consumption? Because you presented some case studies and you actually listed some addresses.
So those case studies have been used since the first year I came here to town. We haven't changed it simply because it's a format that's worked in the past. The hypothetical addresses are not actual true cases, they're hypotheticals.
Yeah, and just to answer your question, there is no difference in the rate.
Yes,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, that I understand. I was
Yeah.
just curious, as to perhaps maybe where you live might affect the volume of water that you used or whatever.
No, it's really the internal, interior and exterior water usage that
Okay.
is, so really, the fate of the ratepayer is in their own hands. If they want to use more water, they will pay more. If they want to use less water, they will pay less up to a certain point. You do have a minimum usage of 600 cubic feet per quarter in town, which is both a reasonable practice and very common in the Commonwealth.
Very good. Anybody else? All good? So we have a motion before us to approve the following 4-tier water and sewer rates for the fiscal year 2019. Someone like to make this motion?
I'll move that we approve the following 4-tier water and sewer rates for fiscal year 2019. For 0 to 600 cubic feet, the FY19 water rate, $5.51, and the FY19 sewer rate, $6.86. For 601 to 3,000 cubic feet, $6.66 for the FY19 water rate, and the FY19 sewer rate is $12.96. For 3,001 to 6,000 cubic feet, an FY19 water rate of $7.34, and an FY19 sewer rate of $14.24. And for 6,000 or more cubic feet, the FY19 water rate, $7.80, and the FY19 sewer rate, $15.21.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? I just want to say, I just mentioned to Ms. Connell, I recall last year when you came before us, explaining the surplus and how we've held the rate to the 17 rates to 16. But we understood then that it was not gonna be the norm.
Permanent solution?
But it was relief that the residents of this town get for 1 year, so I thank you for that. So hearing no other comments, all those in favor say aye.
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 It's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, so I'd like to call forward the Chair of the Town Government Study Committee, Rick Neely, and whatever members of your committee, if you want to bring them all, you can, you're gonna come alone? Are they here just for moral, bring them up, bring them up. This is the board that no, Mr. Walker, please, Mr. Cronin, Ms. Fagan. Oh, I didn't even. Peter, Mr. Mullins to sit in the second row, I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
If you want to begin by, you do a lot of work in this town. If you'd like to introduce the members of your board or committee, that'd be great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was hoping to do that. John Cronin is behind me, Roy Walker, Kathy Fagan, Peter Mullen, and Kerry White. Marvin is also on the committee, Marvin Gordon, and he's not able to join us tonight.
Sure, he's off sailing somewhere.
Tough night to be out there.
Yeah, he's a hardcore, though.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here, and hopefully every one of you has a copy of the article that we've worked on, prepared with the assistance of town council. And let me just give you a little history of how we get to where we have this article. And the history actually starts with this, what's now a little, Ken Warren. This was a book where
I recall.
your board, and members of the prior boards authorized, at our request, the Department of Revenue study of the town's financial structure and operations, and had a series of excellent recommendations, and some of those recommendations, such as strengthening the town administrator, have been implemented. The 3 to 5 member Board of Selectmen also was one of the recommendations that's been implemented. So we've actually gone through this report and continue to use that report as a guideline for some of our activities. And in doing so, we actually created a working group over 3 years ago, to look at the financial structure. And that was one of the highlights of their recommendations. And they have recommended that the use of the assistant town administrator position as a CFO, that's some towns call it a director of finance, but the title is used, variably throughout the Commonwealth as a CFO or director of finance. And we have reviewed the recommendation of the DOR, and the DOR, for example, in its recommendation reported that this kind of position is needed to coordinate all financial reporting and accounting. It pointed out that it's important to prepare multi-year financial forecasts, and that really should be done on an accrual and a cash basis. And that's not just for the general fund, but for example, the water and sewer fund you just heard, when you set your rates, and as well as other enterprise funds. It also recommended that it's necessary to develop annual revenue and expenditure assumptions. That position would really be responsible for doing that and drafting budget guidelines, obviously working closely with the warrant committee. And it would assist them really formulate the annual budget for the town administrator and the Board of Selectmen. It would work on a dotted line with the schools. So the schools would still prepare their own budget, but the assistant school superintendent for business would, on a dotted line, connect with the CFO for the town. As part of this, the process here includes in the article the conversion, if you will, or the change from an elected treasurer to an appointed treasurer. And as we looked at what's been going on in the Commonwealth, we noted that over 80% of the towns with a population greater than 10,000 have now appointed their treasurers, and towns continue to do so. Arlington is in the process of doing that. Hingham did that several years ago, but we have a listing of every town in the Commonwealth and whether they have appointed or elected treasurers. Our working group and all the members of the committee have spent the last almost 6 months calling towns, local towns, peer towns that are on the list with similar budgets and similar size operation. We've called towns with appointed treasurers, we've called towns with elected treasurers, and we've called key stakeholders in those towns to get a feel for how they think the operation works, including the model of a CFO. So we think that really makes sense to continue to do that. We think it's really, we reduce the fragmentation. It'll have everybody working together in terms of having the financial reporting, as I said, and all of that put together. So we're asking the Board of Selectmen tonight to co-sponsor the article. And as I said, we've had town council review this and work closely with John Flynn to write this article. So it has most recently come from his office last week, and we think it's in good order. Let me outline the process for you. If the board is willing to co-sponsor the article, then this would go to the town meeting in the fall. If, in fact, the town meeting approves it in the fall, it's required to go on the annual ballot next spring. If it goes on the annual ballot next spring, you would have simultaneously the election of the treasurer, and you would have this question. If both pass, the treasurer would continue to be an elected treasurer until April of 2020. And at that time, essentially May 1st, end of April, whenever the election is in 2020, the position would become an appointed position. So that's really the highlight of the process. So I'm open to questions.
Anyone first? Go ahead.
I don't have a question.
So my one concern is clearly we're talking about an individual where we have an elected treasurer now, and he just left the room. So Jim McGolf, if he runs for re-election in April, would be re-elected for a year.
Correct.
And in a year from then, would he have to apply for the job if
It would be an appointed position.
so it becomes an appointed position, and if he wished to stay in it, he would have to apply for the job?
Well, Mike and I met with the treasurer
Okay.
to go over this and be upfront about what's going on. We showed him the article, so we went over that, and we went over the scope of duties of the CFO and explained how the organization would work. And it was agreed that Mike agreed to appoint Mr. McAuliffe to the position.
Okay. He was okay with that?
Yes, he stated to the Town Government Study Committee Chair and myself that he preferred to be elected, but as the discussion continued, and we talked about the logistics of the matching referendums, the conversation about being appointed came up.
His preference, he indicated, since he's not here, and I'd ask him to speak
Is to
if
be
he was here.
re-elected, is to run again.
Yeah, his preference is to remain separate and to remain elected.
And I take it, the reason, part of the reason to go to appointed is the same reason we appoint a town administrator. You want to try and get someone with a lot of expertise in that background, that type of background, am I correct?
Combination of that and the fact that when you have, the priorities that are set by the board and the town administrator, the CFO is going to need to prepare these forecasts, for example, and if your priorities are different in each department, you need really somebody to be able to say, this is the current needs.
Right, I get that, Pat.
And everybody needs to work together on this particular activity. So it really ensures that the team is all rowing at the same time and at the same pace.
Okay.
Rick, when you were doing your research, or this question is really open to anyone on the committee, were there any drawbacks to moving towards this model that you found?
I don't recall that there were any drawbacks. I'll turn to the members of the committee. So we split all these duties up, and we did not hear of any drawbacks. That's a good point. So John just made a good point, and that is none of the towns have gone back the other way.
So is it fair to say that the towns that have made this transition to this model, for the most part, it's been a success?
Yes,
In the absence of any towns that have reverted back to the original elected model?
correct.
Mr. Walker,
And it might be helpful to provide some perspective, so.
why don't you just come up, only because I want to catch you on microphone, if you can just come up and join Mr. Neely. Thank you.
It might be helpful to provide a little perspective on the numbers. As Chairman Neely said, about 80% of the municipalities in the Commonwealth are now using an appointed treasurer. So that leaves, of the 351 towns, that means that roughly 74 still have an elected treasurer. But if you look into that information a little more deeply, of those 74 towns, 50 are towns with 10,000 or
yes.
lower populations. So that leaves only 24 municipalities in the Commonwealth that are over 10,000 in population that still have an elected treasurer. So the trend continues to be moving from elected to appointed. And as Rick said, just this April, Arlington was another town that just this year decided to make that change and did so successfully.
Thank you.
So the treasurer's gonna become a contractual, like a department head,
Yes,
correct?
yep. And I'm not sure if I heard it from Chair Neely or his committee, but the accounting office, the IT department, and the treasurer would report up to the CFO.
Okay.
It's not just the treasurer, it's an umbrella that collects all of that, the cash management and collections and operations of the town.
That's correct. We made this article broad enough so that, as Town Administrator Dennehy reported here, you'll see in the third line here, we've included the procurement information technology, and most CFOs do have the responsibility when you really look up an organization. Sometimes, in a large public company, a CIO will be separate, but in other organizations, in smaller organizations, and this town, 110 million, it's not small, but it's certainly in terms of, it's not a public company like IBM.
So I just want to ask a clarifying question. So the Town Government Study Committee's already voted to submit this article. It's going to be included in the warrant. The question for us tonight is really whether we're going to co-sponsor it as the board with the Town Government Study Committee.
We believe that this really should go forward only if the Board of Selectmen is willing to co-sponsor it.
But it is going to be on, we've made the timeline for the October special town meeting.
Correct.
Correct?
We
Correct?
filed it
Yes,
last
okay.
week.
Okay.
So for the reasons stated by Chairman Neely and Mr. Walker and the other members of the Town Government Study Committee, I will move that the Board of Selectmen co-sponsor the article relating to the financial management structure of the town submitted by the Town Government Study Committee for the October 2018 special town meeting.
Do a second.
Second.
Any other discussion? Mr.
I just
Lewis?
have one question. Rick, the question's about the accountability of the treasurer. So if you have an elected treasurer, that position is directly accountable to the electorate. If you have an appointed treasurer, then you have a position that is insulated in some respect from the electorate. Is there any learning about having a little insulation for the treasurer position is better than being directly accountable to the electorate?
Well, I think the answer to that is really in terms of getting everybody working together. So in terms of having a team, whether it's the town accountant or the town treasurer or the chief procurement officer, the idea would be for the CFO to make sure that the folks are all working well and working together and achieving the goals that are outlined for each person annually. So I think you're going to have, obviously, there's two different types of accountability, but I think when you have everybody as a team, and most companies and nonprofit organizations and municipalities and cities have a finance department. We just simply want to have the treasurer as part of the finance department.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Mr. Farrington, anything?
Well, that raises another question.
Okay.
Sorry, hate to
Right.
belabor
No,
the
that's-
point. Can you speak to removal a little bit? How is what about the removal, potential removal of the treasurer? I know that the town administrator unilaterally has appointing authority.
So what you have is the CFO would have to supervise daily and recommend to the town administrator whether there was any disciplinary action needed on any reason. But it would really be the responsibility of the town administrator who has that responsibility in the appointment. He's the appointing authority.
Okay.
No.
No.
No, we do
Just
not.
notice.
No.
It's not a veto,
No.
it's notice.
So it's just the town administrator would be the person who would be held accountable to the board.
Okay.
So my only concern, and I understand totally where we're going with this, I am sensitive to the fact that we're talking about a person's livelihood and having lived through this once. Not something I talk of very often, but I just want to make sure that we're communicating with Mr. McAuliffe. He does serve this town every day, and he does, and I understand going forward, but I'm concerned for him and his family, and that, he's able to remain in the employ of this town for the time that he wishes. That's my own, but I intend to vote for it, but that's my own. It's hard to talk about as you know, having chaired this board it's hard when you talk about people's lives and their livelihood, and especially people who serve this town every day. The hardest thing probably you could ever do is almost every one of you sitting here knows, is put your name on a ballot and ask someone to vote for you. It's a very, takes a lot of courage to do that, and he's done that, and I recognize that, and I just want to make that point here tonight, so. Hearing no other comments, are we good, Mr. Farren? Are we good? Good?
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. We will co-sponsor this with you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work. Have a good night.
Thanks. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you again.
Thank you all.
Thank you for coming out. So item 9, the approval of the municipal broadband request for proposals. This is a motion to approve a municipal broadband request for proposal. I'm gonna, Either-
I can talk to it if you want,
okay, go
Mr.
ahead, that's
Chairman.
fine. That's
Yeah,
fine.
so we had a draft of the RFP that went around when Mr. Chamberlain and Mr. Paxio were here a couple of weeks ago. Town council took a look at it, chief procurement officer took a look at it. There were some edits that needed to be made during the process, and Selectman Zulus can verify this. Alan Bishop, who's our GIS agent, was trying to work with Comcast to identify some specific parameters around this stuff. That is still in the RFP. The only question to be debated, and it could be a contingent vote tonight, is whether he didn't get the answers he was looking for from Comcast to provide all of that necessary information in the RFP, would be to either take that section of the document out or say that we will provide that at a later date after awarding the RFP. It was just something that he couldn't narrow down with Comcast to definitively identify all of what was needed for the map overlay of Comcast runs in Milton.
Do you think we should take it out?
I mean, I can say that acting sooner rather than later on this
Right.
will be helpful in the Comcast negotiations, because we will know, hopefully sooner rather than later, what we're dealing with going forward in terms of an INET and building an INET. So it would be helpful for that purpose.
Correct, and the funding source has been identified. We have reason to believe that the feasibility study will show that it could be a lot more expensive to build this out
Right.
than our current estimate, and what some of the informal negotiations have realized. So, to Selectman Zulus's point, getting this feasibility RFP out there on the street, and getting the 2 to 4 week period, I believe it is, to get this work done, would benefit the town in the long run.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion. Do we have a motion there? We have a motion on the table?
Sure, I'll move to approve a municipal broadband request for proposal.
Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Any other discussion or comment? Good? You good? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 It's unanimous. Okay, item 10. This is a discussion approval, 131 Elliott Street, request for a height variance. Attorney Cochran and Mr. Conley, big day for Mr. Conley today at 131 Elliott Street. I was there. Big day for you.
Big day for the town, right?
Yeah, but you'd put a lot of work into this. I'm not gonna let that go. Good evening.
Good evening.
Did you shut off the machine for the night if we put the machine away till tomorrow?
It's resting.
Okay. Better be back tomorrow.
It's there.
Okay.
And to that end, I think it's a big day for the Conleys. It's obviously a big day for the town. Got some photographs of the machine actually working.
Oh, I was there. I saw it. You could-
And we just thought to come really as an informational presentation, but also obviously to request support relative to an application that we filed with the Board of Appeals for a variance to the height limitations for the building as proposed. We initially presented this to the planning board in April. They voted unanimously 4-0-1 to support the application. We thought to come back here, particularly because of the great work that Katie did on behalf of this board to bring the Conleys back, to find a way to get to yes on an outcome that really we think and they think is going to work for the town. Essentially, since the special permit was granted earlier this year, the architects have really dug into the design of the building for the building permit application process. And since the zoning was enacted roughly 10 years ago, building code has changed several times and has changed the way that mechanicals are maintained in buildings and the like. And as a result, they're proposing adjustments to the floor-to-floor heights on the residential, of additional 6 inches per floor so that there's room in the ceiling for adequate ductwork, as well as an additional 1 foot in the commercial area that's on the Central Ave side of the building in order to accommodate potentially a restaurant in there. Currently, the first floor is at a height of, 11 feet. They're looking for 12 feet, and the heights of the floor-to-floor heights for the residential areas is going from 9 to 9.6 at a finished floor-to-floor height, and that creates a need for approximately 3.5 to 4 feet height adjustment. The visual of the increased height will be felt on the Central Avenue side of the building, which is where the commercial end of the building is located. You really won't feel the height adjustment at all as you head down Elliott Street on the residential end of the building. And so the total height that we're requesting is 4 feet. We are before the Board of Appeals next Thursday night for hearing. As I said, the planning board fully supported the application. I think it's an appropriate modification to the building. It won't really affect either the massing or the visual appearance of the building. The building will look exactly the same as it did before, except that it will have incremental changes in the height of each floor. And so open it up to questions, and if the board would deem fit, I think the Board of Appeals in cases like this is always appreciative if planning board, the selectmen are able to vote support for these types of modifications.
Comment?
Yeah, I just have, well, I would like to just take an opportunity to, my name came up, but there's one person in this town who is really responsible for the point we're at today, where the building is moving to be demolished, and we're on track for what I think is the best outcome for this particular property, which is the mixed-use development with the condominiums and the retail units. And that is the former chair of the planning board, Alex Whiteside. Alex spent hours and hours over years and years and years working on the zoning for this, working on the special permit for this project. And I just want to publicly recognize, at this critical stage, Alex Whiteside and all of his contributions to the Henry's project over the years. And I know Steve and Jerry Conley, congratulations to you both on where we're at today, and it was great to see. But I know you also recognize all the effort that Alex put in, and I would like to publicly mention that, because I heard from a few people today and got some Facebook posts that were being sent around with videos of the demolition happening, and the first person I was sending those off to was Alex Whiteside. So I just wanted to publicly recognize, he's not on the planning board now, he is our former chair of the planning board, but without Alex Whiteside, this project would not be where it is today. And I think that just bears saying, but it's wonderful to see the progress that's being made here. And I'll move that we support the request of 131 Elliott Street LLC to be granted a height variance for the proposed building.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just a couple of quick questions, 2 or 3. Steve, so it's 3,800 square feet? Is that right, on the first floor for commercial?
The commercial's 3,850, yes.
3,850. And 38 residential units?
38 condominiums.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you told me that earlier, but just double check. Okay.
Good.
Well, yeah.
Mr. Lewis?
So these appear to be in context de minimis changes. I'm just wondering if there's any feedback or opposition from the neighborhood on this.
None that we've heard. We've been public about this. There's been notification, obviously. This is not the first time 36 Central Avenue, which is across the street, went through a similar process, was granted a height variance for a couple of feet to really address similar issues. The special permit was granted. They needed to go seek a variance once the building plans were ready, and then the special permit was amended accordingly. We went through a similar process for 2 Adams Street, which is a building that unfortunately was never built. But similarly, a height variance for that building of about 3 feet was granted as well. Went through the process with the Board of Appeals, went back to the Planning Board to amend the special permit to incorporate the variance itself. This would be the 3rd time, at least that I've been involved, similarly with larger buildings in the new zoning district, overlay districts where zoning was written to account for a certain height, didn't account for modifications to building code, and de minimis modifications to height were necessary to support those buildings.
When do you go before the ZBA?
Next Thursday, August 23, we're the second hearing on at 7:45.
And then if that's approved, back to the planning board?
Back to the planning
Back to the planning board.
Right. We're filing the application to amend the special permit tomorrow with the expectation that we'd be heard at the September 13th meeting of the planning board. If the Board of Appeals votes favorably, then the planning board can vote to amend to adopt the recommendation or the finding of the Board of Appeals.
So if that all happens, do you foresee being able to start something before this year ends, 18 ends?
Yes.
Okay. Just trying to flush everything out, Mr. Mullin. I'm trying to get as many, I'm trying to get as many answers as I can here tonight. Okay. Any other questions? Are we good?
Good.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Good luck.
Thank you.
Take
Thank
care.
you very much.
You might as well stay here, Mr. Cochran. And the next item is discussion of 40R proposal by Falcone Company's Adams Court project. And I welcome Bob Falcone to the table as well. Good evening. Floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm not sure whether we requested or whether this was something that the board had put on, but I did want to take the opportunity to meet with the board. We had I think a very productive meeting with the planning board last Wednesday. The planning board spent some amount of time and agreed to adopt a schedule of activity around a consultant overview of traffic analysis, traffic studies that have been done. There have been several done for East Milton, parking analysis, density analysis, and other things, to see whether or not they can work with us to arrive at a 40R zoning overlay, a draft of a bylaw that could be presented to town meeting in the winter with the work wrapped up by the end of November. We look forward to working with the planning board on that. We look forward to this board's input to the extent that this board wants to be involved in that. We think obviously it's important. And, you know, we appreciate and thank the planning board for agreeing to move forward, working with us on what we hope is going to be an effective process and a good outcome.
Comments? Anyone?
I have a question. I know we're here to talk about 40R. We're getting an awful lot of emails from residents of the town who are still very concerned about density and size and how many stories the proposed building would be. And my question is, because 40R is a 20 or 25% affordable units?
It's 20%, but if the town wants to take advantage of all of the units on the SHI, then it has to be 25%.
Right. I'm
Okay.
aware of that.
Is the alternative for a 10% development something that is still on the table, or something you're still considering as an alternative to 40R if, at the end of this process, we're not able to get to widespread agreement among the community that a 20% affordable development, which would mean a greater number of units, if we're not able to get broad support for that, is the smaller 10% project still being considered?
My recommendation was that alternative be studied at the same time. We arrived at a 10% outcome in April or February that was not acceptable to the town. 10%, I think, would be possible here, but my concern would be that 10% would still be too big.
Wait, I guess I should have asked it a different way too, because I understand that in April it wasn't acceptable, but that was before you changed the design where you're incorporating the current building into the new project, and you're not contemplating a below-ground garage. So if you were to consider a 10% project, not having an underground garage, which I know from the prior discussions was a very expensive piece of this project, but maybe an above-ground parking, would that be something, it sounds like it is something that should be considered on a parallel track, but is that something that could be considered and might result in a different number of units than what you were proposing in April?
I think it's possible. I think there are two bogeymen, if there are issues with respect to this. One is height, and one is unit count. If you go to 10%, the unit count could drop to somewhere in the range of 50, which is roughly where we were before. I don't see us dropping a story in the height.
It won't work anyways, dropping a story with the garage.
The height, I think the height, and I don't know whether that's something that the neighborhood can get over, because the height's the height, and it can't drop.
So, go ahead.
So, we can work through a whole process, and we look forward to working through a whole process, but at the end of the day, that process has to arrive at a minimum size building that works for the project.
You good, Nancy? You okay?
Yeah, I guess there are alternatives to 40R, but there are benefits to 40R as well, we know. So my question really is just considering other proposals at the same time.
So Ned, you mentioned that the schedule of activities that the planning board set out. So the question that I have is, what's the process for this board's involvement? You mentioned this board's involvement, so that's, so I'm not clear on.
So I can,
Oh, yeah.
okay, so I was just waiting till everyone else. So I've met with the chair of the planning board twice. In our second meeting, we actually included the two leadership from East Milton, Peter Dunn and Steve Rhines. So Cheryl, I believe, is on vacation. I think she's gonna wait till she gets back. I haven't even actually seen the schedule, but I believe what she would like to do is have 2 members of this board, 2 members of their board, at least 2 members of East Milton Neighborhood Association. It's been suggested a member of the chamber, one of East Milton businesses. I mean, the one thing clear to me is we're gonna have to have dialogue, and Katie's right, we're getting inundated with emails. People are definitely concerned. I get, where you are at, and I get what your intention is, but I don't think we're gonna get anywhere without dialogue. And I think dialogue is the way we have to do it. And I think that's probably the best thing, like, for me, and I think even some of the planning board members, and I'm sure some of my colleagues, the 40R presentation is something that was brand new to all of us. We had never, and truly, that has some benefits. The one thing both Katie and I have talked about that we liked in the most recent was the opening up of Bassett Street and stepping it back from the being so, as both the original and the mixed-use proposals were. So that's just one aspect of it, and the other is obviously the court. The only other thing that, for my fellow members here, that Cheryl Tagay suggested to me is perhaps we spend a little bit of money and hire our own traffic analysts to take all of this. There's been so many studies, I mean, plus our deck study, everything, and looking at it all in, how it's going, because I think one of the things is people are afraid, what is going to happen. And I think if we can answer questions and look at details, I think it's incumbent on us to do that, and I think we should do that. And
I think they voted, one of the things that came out of last Wednesday night was the request that Chase Berkeley and John Thompson identify a consultant or a list of consultants
Right.
from which they could choose. to perform that sort of a peer review of all of the traffic study work that's gone in, so that they get someone who's looking at all of it, can understand really what happens relative to traffic, what's the background, relative to anticipated growth over time, and then how does a new project like this layer in on top of that and affect that growth? So that was a clear directive that came out of the meeting on Wednesday, is that Bill Clark was to work with
That came out, that's the same came out of our meeting, right, that came out of our meeting, and it was actually Charles idea to go to Chase and let Chase pick someone that he had faith in that would represent the town and look at everything, so, and I think for all of us, I think the more questions we can answer and the more things we know versus what we don't know probably helps us all in the long run.
Yeah, the town does need people the expertise to look at the plan, the density, the impact of that density, parking, is parking adequate, is it insufficient, we say we're over parking, but that needs to be challenged and tested. All of those things, how does the site work physically? Is entry to a garage in the proper location? If this height is the height in the proper location? All of those things ought to be evaluated. And so I think the planning board was looking at a set of consultants, one a traffic consultant, possibly the MAPC, and some expertise from the MAPC to help them do some of the other analysis, and do that in a schedule where they would be reporting back potentially on September 27th with a series of inputs from consultants, with a potential joint meeting with this board on October 11th, public comment on perhaps everything on October 25. They were laying out a series of steps relative to their own schedule, when certain deliverables would be provided, and there would be certain targeted sets of things to discuss laid out at those meetings, and they spent a lot of time sort of thinking through the time frame of that. She and Bill had worked on a draft of a schedule. They dug into that schedule, made some modifications to that. I haven't seen a new posting on that, but those types of things, which are important, and then obviously involving representatives of East Milton is important. We don't run away from that. We're not afraid of that. We look forward to that. And
I think it's critical.
Dialogue is,
I really do.
dialogue
Okay.
is necessary.
Go ahead.
So does that schedule include a date by which
I don't
we should
even
get
have
our?
it yet.
Oh,
I don't
okay,
even have it
yeah.
yet. I don't even have
Just
it.
in order to move things along, we might want to get our
Yeah, as soon
members
as-
designated.
Yeah, so-
Unofficial, there would be, one of the things that has to happen, if you're gonna get an article to a February town meeting, right? This board has to set the date of that meeting, probably early January. As I understand it, DACD needs to review the draft of the proposed article to make sure it conforms to their standards before it gets presented to town meeting.
If it's a 40R.
If it's a 40R.
If it's a 40R.
Right.
Okay. Right.
Separately, if it's not, we've got, Central Avenue and Milton Village PUDs, which are pretty good templates for
Okay.
how the bylaw might look, subject to details around height, density, parking requirements that would be drilled into as part of this process. 90% of the bylaw is written today. It's the 10% that really matters that has to be addressed in terms of how the building would be developed, how you would address parking, how, those types of things.
Just to Mr. Zulus, to the point of the traffic, bringing in at someone, I think this is something that the new traffic mitigation committee may want to weigh in, at least to extrapolate whatever data they come up with, because I think there's just so much going on over there that I think they need to look at all of it and how it's going to affect. It's not, and that's not all on you, it's really on us to need to do that, so. Okay.
We did a traffic study
I know,
that was done on the 61 unit.
the original.
the second one.
Or the second one?
That didn't incorporate traffic from the existing office building. It hadn't included that. So it could be updated relative to the new plan, which takes into account the existing volume of commercial, which would move over to the new building, and then any additional retail office that gets added to it, plus the residential.
Okay.
We didn't go further with the traffic analysis than where we were sort of November, December of 2017.
Okay.
Can I just add further to
Sure.
the timing issue? I think if we were going to target a February town meeting, we'd really need to make that decision by December rather than January, because there's so much extra time built into getting the warrant in the post offices and in the houses for a special town meeting, so, yeah.
They've got December 13 as a date that they would vote to submit a draft of an article, final draft of an article,
For a February special?
for February special.
Yeah, because we'd probably want to target early February rather than late February. It just interferes with the warrant committee's budget process, the later it gets.
Right. And school vacation week gets in there.
Yes.
We can do it on school vacation week. No, I'm kidding. All these parents just went, you have to have a little humor here. These are long nights.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay. Anything else?
No, we appreciate that, again, I know earlier in the summer, we were sort of pounding on the table, asking the town to react and to begin to work with us, and the town's doing that, and we appreciate it, and we look forward to rolling up our sleeves and getting at it, through the fall.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you for
All right,
coming
thank you
in.
very
Thanks
much.
for your time. Thank you. Okay, item 12, discussion approval on a moratorium on all unplanned, non-emergency work by National Grid. We have a motion here. This is a continuance to our July, when were they here? It was in July. It was in July 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
We have, is there anyone here from National Grid tonight? No, no one is here? So we have, we had a request, as we all know, there is an ongoing labor dispute going there. We have a motion to approve and sign a letter calling for a moratorium on all planned non-emergency gas main work. My only personal addendum to this is I'm concerned about just the number of that the bargaining sessions are few and far between. And my main concern is we are about to enter winter, and there are residents of this town who are going to be looking to have gas
Conversion.
situations converted.
Yep.
So I would just ask this as a friendly amendment that this letter, that we put a date of, to review it of October 15th. That we don't just give a carte blanche, and then the last thing I want to do is sitting here in December with 30 residents here before us who are looking, because it's not just, it's going, as we all know, much of the gas situations that happen in this community, particularly as far as leaks and loss of service, happen in the winter, when the frost heaves and drops, and if we get a really bad winter, that's just my own thought. So I would like to make that as a friendly amendment, that this letter sets a timeline of October 15th, and if not, they can come back before us again if they're not settled by then.
Thank you. Before we discuss that, as a matter of record, I would like to, with your permission, Mr. Chairman, read this letter into
Sure.
the record. Okay,
Yeah.
good, thank you. This letter is addressed to the National Grid President of Massachusetts, Marcy Reed, United Steelworkers Local 1203 and Local 12012, District 4, Boston Gas Workers, unions, collectively referred to as the unions, represent the men and women who operate gas lines and projects in both Milton and the greater Boston area. Collectively, for several months, the unions and National Grid have been negotiating to reach a long-term contractual agreement that is fair to both parties. The absence of any agreement has led to National Grid choosing to lock out these union employees effective June 25th, 50 days ago. This lockout has subsequently resulted in the loss of health insurance benefits for roughly 1,250 union members and their families, including 9 members and families of Local 12003 residing in Milton. The safety and well-being of National Grid customers and the general public depends upon experienced and well-trained employees providing quality line inspection services and maintenance. A prolonged lockout raises safety concerns and compromises existing services to its customers. The town of Milton is committed to providing heightened scrutiny to the inspections and monitoring of all National Grid work being done during this lockout period. The town of Milton urges both National Grid and Locals 12003 and 12012 to increase its efforts to bargain in good faith. We encourage a resolution that not only ends the lockout, but ideally results in a contractual agreement that's fair and equitable to both parties. The driving factor in this decision is the safety of our residents. We believe that the safety is compromised by less experienced and undertrained temporary employees performing the work in the absence of the locked-out employees. As a matter of public safety, we are suspending the issuance of all new non-emergency work permits until National Grid ends the lockout and allows its local union 12003 and local union 1212 employees to return to work, ideally under a contractual agreement. So, as a matter of record, that is included. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My concern is that the letter may not have the teeth that we would like it to have if we don't keep this as open-ended, if we close it, provided you're willing to revisit this October 15th?
I'm willing to revisit on October 15th, but I just, having spent over 3 decades in public safety in this community, knowing the issues that occur here from a gas perspective in the winter, and including all of our municipal buildings. Every building we have is on gas. We've converted all of our infrastructure from oil to gas. I think that if we just leave this open-ended, we could be sitting here in January. I mean, we've all heard that they're talking Thanksgiving now. They're only meeting once a week. It's not like this isn't like the situation in Boston a couple of years ago with a couple of unions where they were in bargaining all night long. I mean, I think that as the chief elected board of this community, we need to look out somewhat for our citizens and kind of put a little bit of pressure on both and we'll visit this on October 15th. So I don't even want to insert that, we'd do this right now until October 15th and kind of make both sides look and say, hey, wow, we're addressing the union, but they care about their residents who live here as well.
Certainly, I understand. Yeah, this is, I understand there are consequences to every decision, and there are benefits and there are drawbacks to a decision like this. Personally, I think the benefits to this outweigh the drawbacks, but I'm sensitive to the issue that you're raising. I understand it completely, and it's something that we have to take into account. And provided that we can revisit this within 60 days and potentially extend the moratorium.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
That's why I picked the date of October 5th. You picked the date, but I'm fine with October 15th. I'm okay with that.
Okay, and I will insert a clause to have the last sentence, which is in italics, read as a matter of public safety, we are suspending the issuance of all new non-emergency work permits through October 15th.
Are you okay with that? Okay, are you all right?
I guess so.
And
I
some
guess we did-
language that will include, if this lockout were to end prior to that, of course.
That's just you can vote how, I'm just thinking we need to do this, but I think we need to, just looking historically how our winters go here, we need to do this to both sides and look out. There are residents now of this town who are waiting to have gas installed. They can't get it installed because of this lockout.
I just
And
wonder if that's
it's okay
it.
now when it's 90, but it's okay. What happens when it's, we get hit hard? I mean, I was here 2 winters when we got 100 inches of snow. It was bad here. It was awful. And National Grid is one of our partners in public safety. There's someone you need, and I'm just saying that's why I thought of October's, gives them 60 days, but it still doesn't, we're not sitting here in January saying, wow, they haven't settled yet, and what are we gonna do about all the issues? And I'm just looking out for the best interest of what I think is our constituents, the community at large. Go ahead.
Can I, along those lines, one of my questions, I really have two, but the main question is, what effect, if any, will this action have on the residents? That's,
Well, so here's what, if you look at what Braintree did, I'm getting a little technical. So basically what they're approving now are what called level one, like level one.
Grade one.
emergency. Grade one emergencies are all they can work on. Can't work on 2As, they can't work on 2s, they can't work on anything else, so. Grade 2 and 2As are what pretty much happens here a lot in the winter. You'll get town hall and get calls, the fire department, the police calls, I smell gas. And most of those are 2A and 2. And to me, a gas leak's a gas leak. If someone's calling our community about a gas leak smell, basically this letter is limiting them to only grade 1 emergencies. And it even so much as, because I looked into what Braintree is a little bit, it even so much as that if they get down on a grade 1 and 10 feet below, there's a grade 2A or a 2, they're only fixing the one, they're gonna leave the other gas leak.
But
Yeah.
my counter.
I'm not counting, I'm just saying, I did all the homework today, that's factual, so.
No, and my question was going to be what constitutes or what qualifies as a grade 1, as a grade 2 emergency versus non-emergency. And you've shed a little light on that, Richard, thank you. The counter argument to that would be National Grid, with its employees locked out, is understaffed and undermanned. And so to the extent that this letter has any value, and I think it does, otherwise I wouldn't have submitted it, to the extent that it has any value in ending this lockout sooner, everyone's gonna benefit. Without the lockout ending, all the residents, this hypothetical that you're presenting, which I understand is
Gonna be real,
Right,
once it
it's
gets
going
cold.
to be real.
Yeah, it's gonna be real.
they still may not have any recourse, because National Grid's gonna be understaffed and undermanned, and they can't answer these calls anyhow. So, that's the counter argument to this, is I understand and I'm not unsympathetic to the situation that you're presenting, but what I'm saying is, a letter like this could end that lockout sooner, so that those individuals aren't in that situation to begin with.
I want to agree with you on that, I'm not 100% sold on that, but
Okay,
I hear where you're going on it, I do hear that.
so
Go
if
ahead.
I could just ask, so is it only a concern for the residents as we get into winter, or is it a concern for residents before that? And I don't know if we know the answer to that, but.
Well, to me, a gas leak's a gas leak, when someone calls here because they have a gas leak, it's a concern to a resident, Michael came out of the Public Works arena, he knows as well as I do that as we move into the colder weather in winter, gas leaks become a bigger issue, and just as we've seen how old our infrastructure is in our water service, some of our MWRA pipes, in this whole huge East Milton water project, the same can be said for a lot of our gas lines in this town. That's all, listen, Tony, I agree with you, but I'm just thinking that if we just leave it as an open-end letter and the way this is going, I'm more comfortable with like a 60-day window to review it. I don't want to take our rights away, because the DPU is the ones who license those to work. So if someone else came in with another, like a private residence, had a contract that was DPU approved to do the gas work, they can do it. We're stopping that here. We're technically stopping that in this 60-day window, and I just don't know if I'd want to do that. And I sympathize with that. I have many people I know from the gas company,
Can I ask you a question? I thought, maybe this is for the town administrator, but I thought a few weeks ago when we started getting some inquiries about what National Grid was doing in Milton while the lockout was happening, I thought they really only were doing emergency work anyway. Is that not
Correct,
true
yeah.
anymore?
We got an email on July 10th from Dennis McCaffrey, who's the management operations director, that they were going to cease and desist with any non-emergency work until this dispute was resolved. It's that gray area of what's a grade 1, what's a
Right.
grade 2, what's a grade 3.
Okay.
We smell gas and they'll come out and inspect it and say it's not a grade 1. We're gonna pass on it right now.
So is it, and I'm sorry if I'm being a little obtuse on this, but, so does that mean if they're not gonna do emergency work anyway, that this action won't have any negative effect on the residents?
Well, I think right now, they're saying it to us but should something happen where they want to change their mind,
see.
we're kind of like saying, no, you
I
can't
see.
do it.
Yep, I see.
That's that's why my concern is just to protect the residents a little bit. That's why, okay. You okay with that?
Yeah, I think it would just have to be worded that we would revisit it at that time, so that we've opened the possibility of taking whatever action we think is right at that time, whether it's to extend it or not.
That's all, that's my only concern. Hopefully it's settled. I mean, that's my hope, is that it's settled, but I don't know. Go ahead.
And then, separate from that, and, you know, Tony and I sent Tony my thoughts on the actual language. I think we agree on the thrust of it, but whereas we're speaking on behalf of the town and not individually as public figures, I just get a little concerned about suggestions about how entities and unions should negotiate and how they, so my thought is, I would offer a friendly amendment to say, you know, we should cover 4 points. And that is, we understand there's a lockout and it's affecting union members. And our understanding based on that is that there are safety concerns and it's compromising service. And that based on that, we're going to take this action. And then I would also suggest inviting National Grid to come to a meeting and explain themselves. So those are the 4 points that I would offer as a friendly amendment, just to, and it's a little bit of a nuance from the draft that we have in front of us.
We're talking National Grid, not the union. They've already been.
Right,
we're talking
exactly,
about-
National Grid, yeah, National Grid.
I think they do that.
So that's kind of the
I could reach out to
suggestion,
them.
and it's a little bit of a different, and Tony and I have tried to, we haven't really come to home on this in terms of the nuance of the language. But that's my concern, is that we, on behalf of the town, are making some conclusory statements and making some suggestions about how entities should negotiate and suggesting, you know, hinting at how negotiations are going. And I just would rather keep it pretty straight in terms of what we know and what we surmise based on what we know, and then the action that we're taking based on that.
My only thought, just thinking about inviting them here, though, we may be opening a box on that night for both sides to come that we wouldn't. Some of the things that they've gone through have been pretty ugly already. I just don't know if that would really be, I mean, if you want to, I think that's something we could address going down, but I think right now, knowing from what I've seen take place some other part, I think we want to be careful there with that. I don't want to see 100 people here screaming and yelling, just.
Well, Mike, if we agree as a board to submit this letter, you're not suggesting that we hold off on signing this letter until National Grid comes out? Right?
No, not at all.
No.
Just at the end of the letter, it's a letter to National Grid saying, this is what we understand, this is what we surmise, this is the action we're taking, and if you want to come and present your view, we're happy to listen to you. But I'm not wedded to that. I'm certainly
Yeah,
not wedded to
that's the only part I'm
that.
worried
The
about.
first 3 parts are more important to
Yeah.
me.
Me too.
I prefer not to overcomplicate it,
Yep.
frankly, by including that language. I
Yep.
mean, I've reworked this letter 3 or 4 times. I understand that this is really style at this point over substance. I feel the language that I've used is neutral, and it does not shade itself towards one party over the other. I think it's neutral across the board, and the last thing I want to do is insert the town of Milton in some sort of union dispute, and that's why I've italicized this last sentence, which is, this is a matter of public safety, and I believe that to be true, and I accept at face value what the union members have told me. I've witnessed firsthand a public safety issue on Freeport Street on Friday, and they were right, and so I think it's a public safety issue that has the potential to affect the town of Milton in an adverse way, which is why, again, I've drafted this letter. I'm not trying to advocate on behalf, really, of one party or another. I'm truly not. As I said, I think it's a public safety issue. I think the language that I've drawn up and drafted is as neutral as it can be. I'd like to move forward with the letter. I would ask the support of my colleagues here on the board. I will make a concession to include that clause that Richard suggested, which is a moratorium for 60 days, with the understanding that we revisit it October 15th and readdress it and go from there.
So So you wouldn't accept a friendly amendment, just covering those 3 points without the, I assume you wouldn't accept a friendly amendment.
What are those 3 points? again?
Those 3 points are, we understand there's a lockout. It's come to our attention that there's a lockout, and this is how it's affecting, which is much of what you said, And our understanding is that it causes safety concerns and compromises service,
Yeah,
and that based on that, we're taking this action.
that's what my letter says.
Well, we.
It says all
But
three of those
it
things.
does, but it also talks about urging the parties to bargain in good faith, encouraging a resolution that is fair and equitable to the parties. It just, some of the language, I think, goes beyond those simple points to talk about the negotiations. And I think as a town, to the extent that we are urging that negotiations take place in a certain way, and I think that's something that we should shy away from. Again, as public figures, I think individually we could say, look, we think that this should happen, and we think you should do this. But I think as a town, we should really focus on the public safety issue and focus on the fact that we're taking this action based on the public safety issue. So that's the thought.
I'll reread these 2 sentences. I don't want to draw this out any longer than we need to. The town of Milton.
We're getting there.
The town of Milton urges both National Grid and Locals 1203 and 1212 to increase its efforts to bargain in good faith. We encourage a resolution that not only ends the lockout, but ideally results in a contractual agreement that is fair and equitable to both parties. I feel that's as neutral as you can be. And
I get where
again, we're
Michael's going with it, though.
encouraging the end of a lockout. That's all we're doing. We're
I get-
encouraging the end of a lockout.
I get where Michael's going, though. It's like, either we're representing the union, either we're getting ourselves involved in negotiation, or we're representing the citizens of the town. So I get that one.
That's the issue.
Yeah, I get that there.
Well, is it just a matter of shortening this letter a little bit to take out a couple of sentences? Because, Tony does say that in the second paragraph that there's a lockout. So I think Mike's first point is touched on in the second paragraph.
So, yeah, it basically is, just eliminating a couple of sentences and maybe, again, a little bit of nuance, talking about the fact that this is what we understand and this has come to our attention, rather than making some conclusory statements about what may or may not have happened during the negotiations. So, yeah, it's really just cutting out some of the characterizations and focusing on the safety issue and the action that we're taking based on that. Look, I think we should do this. But I think we should do it in what I perceive to be the right way. And
So how about if we do this? Oh, go ahead.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna ask you, could we, since we don't have a motion before us yet, we've talked about a few friendly
Right,
amendments, but we
right.
don't actually even have a motion. We've got a draft letter, we've already got one change that the chair has suggested about saying we'd revisit, the moratorium would be through October 15th, and we'd revisit it at that point. Can we authorize, kind
That's
of
where I'm
agree on
going.
concept, and then maybe authorize Mr. Farrington and Mr. Zulus to work out some language that might address the concerns that have been raised, but still
That's where I was going.
essentially preserve what the point Tony's trying to make in the purpose of the letter, but just work the language so that it's agreeable
Can you do
to
that?
the board
All right,
entirely.
because that just saves us time tonight, and then we'll just, I'll be happy with whatever the two of you come out with. Will you?
Yes.
Okay.
Because
Provided we can get this letter signed by the 4 of us and
Yes.
submitted.
Yes.
Is
And
there,
we're not readdressing this at
No, I'm not doing, I'm gonna make a motion,
Okay.
what I wanna suggest, I'm with Katie, that we make a motion to approve a moratorium on all unplanned emergency work by National Grid, subject to the edicts that have been discussed already and whatever you two work out, and then we will sign that and send it.
Well, you're placing a lot of faith in Michael and
I am, I'm doing it, well, that's,
But-
sometimes
I've
as
got
chair,
faith,
that's what
Tony.
you do.
but it's because it sounds like you're both in agreement on the concept.
Yes.
It's really just a matter of some wordsmithing here.
That's exactly, I think that's right. I think that's right.
That's how it appears to me, anyway.
Me too.
You're not sure it's
I don't want to be unfair.
Listen, I'm gonna say,
You're not being.
listen, and if it's not, and if you can't, we'll bring it back, but I'm confident you can.
Okay, I can live with that.
Okay,
So we have I made a motion, do we have a second?
second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. I know you can do this. Okay, item 13 is being deferred.
Yes, I will. This is the Line Bike Statement of Work. I do see Lee Toma in attendance. I will ask Lee's help. We've reached out to Scott Mullen from Line Bike on several occasions to go over some edits from town council. And until we hear back from Mr. Mullen, we cannot hear this or approve the statement of work. So I'm asking Lee, who has been a stalwart for this, for the all things bicycle in town, that he might work with, either we can get on a conference call tomorrow, because, you know, as we just talked about, October 15th will be here before you know it, and the next thing you know, it's going to be winter time, and this may be deferred until springtime.
And I'm with you 100% on that. My patience is growing thin. I know that town council has some concerns that are not being addressed as you do. So to be honest, if we cannot work this out very quickly, my own thought would be not to put it back on the agenda until next spring. It may not even be Line Bike at that time. I mean, look what just happened in Quincy. In a matter of one day, they went from yellow to green. But I just, we've gone around on this, this even predates the prior, I mean, didn't we start this with the prior board?
It took a little time to get the MOU accepted from MAPC, and that there was some merit to that. I just asked, maybe Lee could help us get on the same page as Mr. Mullen, and, you know, if it's not on the agenda for the 27th of August, it's going to be too late for this year.
Mr. Toma, you hear that? I'm with you. I know how much you've done on this, but this is becoming a frustrating item for this board here, so I'm hoping that.
Yeah, and they have proven they can roll out the bikes
Right.
very quickly. We saw it go
We saw
from
that.
yellow to green very quickly in Quincy. It's just, we need the document finalized in the best interest of the town.
Okay, thank you. Item 14, a short discussion on the Traffic Mitigation Committee.
Yes, so we discussed this on July 9th, and the chair was unable to be here. We made some revisions based on some suggestions from the town administrator and from others here, and so that's both the proposed charge and the membership have been revised slightly. We didn't take action on the 9th because we wanted to make sure we had your input into that, and so I think in the pack, did the packet have the revised? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And here's the red line, I don't know if it
I'm
was the
fine,
red line.
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
Can I add that I did speak to my department heads, and they're all on board with this. We heard, you know, a case for it this evening. We recently put traffic counters down on Short Pleasant Street.
I know.
I think the audience will find this interesting, if not
I
staggering,
think it's in the
that on a Wednesday in the middle of July, Short Pleasant Street is where you pick up Pleasant Street from Randolph Ave by Ben's Cookie Factory, that 4,700 vehicles travel that road a day. During the summer, when school's not in session and most people are on vacation, we estimate that number could increase to about 7,000 vehicles on a daily basis on a residential one-way street in our town. So, with the peak times being just as you would assume, during the morning commute, midday, and sometimes during the evening commute. So, definitely warranted, and the department heads have taken a look at this and appreciate its value.
So do we
Go ahead,
want
Michael, go ahead, go
to
ahead.
take action on it?
Do you want to, are you prepared?
I know we saw it before, it's not attached here.
Oh,
Okay,
no.
what was the change that
or-
was
Yeah,
made?
here's a red line.
Oh, adding the regional approaches, okay, yeah, that looks fine.
And
Okay.
adding the town administrator or the designee.
Designee.
Okay.
You want to make it as a motion?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm fine.
So I'll move to accept the proposal to establish a traffic mitigation committee with a charge to, one, explore opportunities for lessening, mitigating, and calming the effects of automobile traffic on public ways located within the town of Milton, including but not limited to the potential for regional approaches. Two, to report to the Traffic Commission and to the Board of Selectmen on the results of its work at least once each calendar quarter. And three, to make recommendations based on the results of such work for consideration of the Traffic Commission and the Board of Selectmen. And the proposed membership is 7 members to be appointed by the Board of Selectmen, including one of whom is the chief of police or his or her designee, one of whom is the town administrator or his or her designee, one of whom is the chair of the planning board or his or her designee, one of whom is the chair of the master plan implementation committee or his or her designee, one of whom is a member of the board of selectmen, and two of whom are residents of the town of Milton.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, item 15, approval of a one-day liquor license for the Fruit Center. We have a motion here to approve a one-day liquor license for the Fruit Center Marketplace.
I make a motion to approve a one-day liquor license for the Fruit Center Marketplace at 10 Bassett Street on Saturday, September 15th, 2018, from 1 PM to 4 PM for its Fall Craft Beer Fest.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh,
Aye.
Question?
No.
I saw you leaning forward,
No.
okay.
It's for my eye.
All right. Item 16, so there's a lot here. There's an approval acceptance of the articles submitted to the October 2018 special town meeting. How about if, I take a motion to approve in a second, and then we do three each? Is that all right? A motion to approve it?
Can
Or
I
do we need to
make
read
a
them? Okay,
suggestion?
go ahead, sure.
One thing that we haven't done that I think we need to do is, I think we need to number these articles before they go to the warrant committee so that it eliminates some confusion. So I was gonna suggest in reading the motion that we
Give a
read the
number.
numbers like 1 through 17. They actually look to me like they're in a pretty good order for
Okay.
them to go into final inclusion of warrant, because they group all of the planning board articles together and the library articles together. The order seemed pretty reasonable to me.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Do you want me to make the
You
motion?
want to start? You make the, yeah.
All right, so I'll move that we approve the following articles for inclusion in the October 2018 special town meeting warrant. I'm just going to shorten the first few
You do
for the
whatever
planning
you
board.
want. That's
So
fine.
Article 1 is to amend the zoning bylaws height regulations. Article 2, amend the zoning bylaws home use occupation. Article 3, amend the zoning bylaws for parking in front and side yard setback areas. Article 4 would be amend the zoning bylaws for pre-existing non-conforming structures. Article 5, amend the zoning bylaws for traffic impact mitigation. Article 6, amend the zoning bylaws for the traffic study revolving fund. Article 7, amend the zoning bylaws by adding special permit 21, Brook Road Overlay District, Section 3, subsection S. Article 8 is amend Chapter 11 of the general bylaws for the adjustment of the planning board term. Article 9, amend Chapter 11, Section 1 of the general bylaws, planning board associate member. Article 10, act to authorize the appointment of retired police officers as special police officers. Article 11, fire station building committee composition change. Article 12, plastic bag ban bylaw. Article 13, discharge of the library building committee. Article 14, transfer of the Kitterbranch Library property. Article 15 is the chief financial officer article that we discussed earlier tonight. Article 16, amend the general bylaws to adopt gender-neutral language of select board. And Article 17, the citizens petition to amend the general bylaws to adopt gender-neutral language of select board.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Can we just
Sure.
report, the town administrator and I can report, we had a call with town council today on the plastic bag ban bylaw, and he had suggested 3 changes.
I saw that.
You all saw them.
Everyone
There was
saw that.
one that we talked with Hillary Wade, our environmental coordinator, about, which was the second one, about adding biodegradable or compostable bags. And we decided, the 4 of us who were on the call decided it would not make sense to move that change forward, because currently our vendor does not have the capability of composting those bags. So if a store were to use biodegradable or compostable bags, and a lot of residents take those
Right.
bags at the stores, use them and put them in the recycling, our recycling would just end up putting them in the trash. So
Correct.
we defeat the whole
So
purpose.
Sunrise couldn't handle that.
Right,
Do
at
we-
this time. There
Do
are
we envision
communities
they-
that,
Do we envision them maybe able to do this in the future?
could be something that we add, yeah. There are some communities that do it, but not,
Could we add this, Kate, if we had to go back
Yeah,
to it?
the thinking was we could amend it,
Okay,
if
okay.
this passes the town meeting, we could amend it down the road to include biodegradable bags. There's a possible state law that's being considered
As
on
well?
the topic, but even that did not include, I think, what Hillary told us, that did not include compostable bags either in their definition of a checkout bag for a grocery store. So, that was the only one of John's 3 changes that we didn't suggest making. The first one was just a wording change. He wanted to add health and public safety in the purpose section. And then in the last section 7, he wanted to give the Department of the Inspectional Services Department, the ability to promulgate
Enforce.
regulations
Okay.
that would allow for them to give someone who had a financial hardship to give them a break, essentially, in terms of compliance, which would be optional on the Inspectional Services Department. It's just an authorization.
Okay.
Katie, he said that some of that language might be able to be worked out in town meeting, right?
And
In
any
the
further
form of a
changes, yeah, John
friendly amendment?
thought that if we needed to make any changes to definitions, as long as it's within the scope of the article, during the warrant committee process or at town meeting, there might be further changes.
Okay.
So I think that's the version that was submitted, is the one that has two of John's three changes.
Correct.
Anything else? Anybody? Good.
One more small item, the act authorizing the appointment of retired police officers as special police officers. In your packet, it says 4 years. We changed that to
Right, I
5
got
years.
that.
So it'll read, no retired police officer shall be appointed under this act as a special police officer if the officer has been retired for more than 5 years.
How much does that pay?
And did town council change that language to add the introductory language?
did,
Okay,
yeah.
great.
Yes, what you had suggested, yes.
Probably more than this.
Yeah. Okay. We're all good? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, it's unanimous. 17, boards and committees. I believe this is our appointment to appoint, we have a motion to appoint our colleague, Linda Collins, as our representative to the Affordable Housing Trust.
I'll move to appoint Melinda Collins of 170 Hillside Street as a trustee of the Affordable Housing Trust to serve through November 2018.
Second, do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, 18 is, this is something that we've been waiting to do. This was passed by town meeting, am I right, Kate? This was
Yes.
a couple of years ago. We have 4 residents who submitted applications stating their interest in serving on the Traffic Commission. All 4 are attached. All names and addresses are listed below so that the board can determine. We have a motion. Do we want to do this tonight, or do you want to? Are we ready to go on this, or do you want?
Do we have a recommendation from the DPW director or the police chief?
Yes, they recommended Marion Driscoll of 40 Margaret Road and Steve Geiser of 50 Canton Avenue.
I thought Ms. Driscoll had some good qualifications.
Absolutely.
I don't know her, but she seemed to have a lot of transit experience.
She actually came a year ago. This started with her, and I think it's the longest one it would take to appoint someone, but she, longtime high-ranking official in the MBTA who is a subject matter expert to so many communities in this Commonwealth now on mass transit, which is something that I think would be very worthy to our Traffic Commission. So if you want to go with those, I'll take a motion. Can I accept a motion and recommend those 2? If that's okay with everyone else, is that all right?
And this will fill all the seats on the
This will
Traffic
fill all the
Commission.
seats on the Traffic Commission. Okay. Do you want to make that, Kate?
Sure, I'll move that we appoint Marion Driscoll of 40 Margaret Road and Stephen Geister of 50 Canton Avenue to the Traffic Commission to serve through, this is January of 2019? Is it only a 6-month appointment?
The last appointment was done in January, so basically it goes to the,
Okay.
to fill the
Okay.
term.
All right.
Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Any discussion? I just want to thank them all for applying, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Okay, item 19, this is a discussion, there's an update on airplane issues and possible recommended actions on federal legislation and information requests.
So,
ahead.
so Katie and I and the chair of the INAC board,
Schmidt.
Andy Schmidt, spoke on Friday. And there are 4 items that we want to highlight for the board, 2 of which we're going to ask the board to act on, and we realize that these are very fast. One of them is particularly time-sensitive. It has to do with the FAA authorization bill. The other one is a little less time-sensitive, but I think it's a little less controversial, so we may be able to go ahead and do it. So with that introduction, let me lay out the 4 things, and then Katie can talk about the specifics of what we're asking for in terms of the vote. The first, last Thursday, our CAC representative, Cindy Christensen, asked for a communication with Representative Capuano about some technical suggestions on amendments for the FAA reauthorization bill. And this is time-sensitive because that bill, as we know from our prior discussions, may be taken within a week or within the next 2 weeks. And so we worked to prepare a letter addressing that and addressing our prior
Vote?
yeah, prior vote on the FAA authorization. So Katie, if you want to, so we're going to ask you to vote, even though we apologize that we had to try to do this really
Right, I get
fast.
that.
So anyway, so Katie, if you want to go through the.
Are you going to make this, you want to make a motion
detail.
that we can vote on as well, when you're done? Do you have a motion to bring before us to vote on today?
Yes,
Yeah,
on this
Mike-
letter.
Michael, have it?
I'll
Okay,
just-
okay, go ahead,
just
okay.
Briefly, the two technical amendments that Cindy Christensen highlighted to us were, in the Reauthorization Act, Section 156 of Subtitle D, right now it applies to departures only and not arrivals, and it requires community noise concerns to be addressed where feasible. So the request to Capuano would be to remove the word departure to make it apply to arrivals and departures, because obviously Milton is impacted by arrivals primarily. And we're impacted by departures, but the fours are the ones that, the two runway usage that impact us the greatest, and those are the arriving flights. And then in Section 160 of Subtitle D, which requires the FAA to review and improve community involvement practices. Right now, it only applies to a metroplex, which would not pick up Logan Airport and some other airports around the country. So the technical correction is to make the section apply to metroplexes and single-site locations. So each place in which that word metroplex appears, we're asking Representative Capuano to add the words "and single-site locations." So those are the two technical corrections, technical amendments, rather.
And then we included in the letter as well an iteration for the purposes of Representative Capuano, but a reiteration for the purposes of our congressional representatives of support for the flight path and altitude amendment that we talked about a couple of months ago. So I'll move for the board to sign the letter to Representative Capuano on those points.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
thank you, it's unanimous.
Okay, thank you.
You have another one?
Yeah, we have.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
sorry.
all right, okay, all right.
Sorry.
Wait a minute,
yeah,
what's this?
Yeah, I know.
All right, go ahead.
We were busy on Friday. So the second thing that we're asking, and again, we know that this is a bit rushed, but this one I think is a little easier. These are letters with respect to our requests of JetBlue on the Vortex generator. And these are they're both follow-up letters. One of them is directly to JetBlue because JetBlue has not responded to our request for their conclusions of their study on including the Vortex generator for the balance of their fleet. And we haven't heard from them for nearly a year, since September of 2017. And the request goes back nearly 2 years, back to 2016. And so one of the letters asks JetBlue to provide us with their response on when and how they're going to implement the Vortex generator for the balance of their fleet. And then the other letter is a letter to our congressional representatives, Senators Markey, Warren, and Representatives Lynch and Capuano, asking them to follow up because they wrote a letter on our behalf to JetBlue and other airlines on the Vortex generator, and JetBlue apparently hasn't responded to them either, so we're asking them to follow up in the letter to them. So it's two letters. And again, I don't think this is really controversial for us. We're just really following up to try to get some answers from JetBlue about when they're going to be able to outfit the remaining of their fleet with the Vortex generators. Katie, I think you were going to describe the substance of the letter, but anyway, we're asking for...
I think you've done that.
Yeah.
So you want to make a motion? Make a motion
Yeah,
on that one as well.
if everyone's comfortable
Yeah.
with it. Okay, great.
Right, yeah.
So I'll move to have the board sign the letter to JetBlue as described, and the letter to our congressional representatives as described about the Vortex generator.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
it's unanimous.
And two final things, just to, as an update, and we're not asking for any vote on this at this time. The first is a follow-up to some information, again, provided by our CAC representative, Cindy Christensen, on the potential for a FOIA request. And we're hopefully will have that in an upcoming meeting, FOIA request to get information from Massport and/or the FAA. The second is we will be preparing a letter to the FAA regarding recent conditions in Milton. We haven't updated that for a little bit, for a while, and we think it's important to keep a record and stress what the residents of Milton are undergoing because of NextGen and the RNFs. So that is in the line of coming attractions.
Okay.
Did I get everything, Katie?
Yes.
We're good? Mr. Denning?
Thank you,
floor is
Mr.
yours.
Chairman, members of the board. My first statement tonight is an acknowledgement of Milton resident Crosby Lawler, who, accompanied by his son Tony and his daughter Maureen, as well as our Veteran Services agent Kevin Cook, was among 75 Korean War veterans who received the Korean Ambassador of Peace Medal from the Republic of Korea during Saturday's State House ceremony. So it's a very worthy acknowledgement, and I think we need to pay respect to Mr. Lawler for his service to our country, and Kevin Cook as they went to the State House on Saturday, and the governor's Veteran Services agent, Francisco Urena, and members of the Korean Republic. So this is quite a medal. We put it out on Twitter today, and it's quite an accomplishment. So kudos to Mr. Lawler for everything he's done for our country. The only other thing tonight I have is just I want to wish Emily Martin well. It's been very nice working with her in the 22 months I've been here. She's professional, she's going to succeed, and I want to wish her best of luck in her future endeavors towards her master's degree and the rest of her career. So thank you for everything, Emily. Best of luck.
I know we're gonna see you again, but
Maybe in 2 weeks, I don't know.
maybe in 2 weeks?
Actually, I will be here for Citizens Week.
In 2 weeks you will? Will you really?
There you go.
Okay.
But thank you again, Emily, for everything. You talk about people in town that work behind the curtain, that don't get all the fame and glory. Emily is that person. So best of luck, Emily. Thank you for everything.
I think too that the path that you're thinking about walking down is a very credible one and highly rewarding in life, and I wish you all the best in that, but I will miss you, and I know we'll see. Really? You're back in 2 weeks? Okay.
Citizens Week at least.
Okay, at least.
Hey.
She wants to join the Airplane Noise Advisory Committee. Is that it?
That's it. Thank you.
No. I just want to echo my thanks too to Emily, and I really don't have anything. I was very happy to be, and I've already said to my colleague here, you put tireless hours in, and as always, you always want to divert the thanks to someone else, but I know how hard you worked to make that crane work today, and there were a lot of happy people. The only thing I do want to say from the Milton officers who were there today, the neighbors are very excited, and they're driving by trying to video while they drive. Park your car and walk over. They were very they were making those detail officers very nervous today. Just get out and take the video, but hopefully there won't be much to video after a couple of days, because it seemed to be going pretty quick. Other than that, that's all I have.
I'll just add my thanks to Emily. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to work together longer, but good luck going forward.
3 things. I would like to, I sound like a broken record, congratulate one Brian Toohey again on his most recent golfing accomplishment at the Hoosier Club. I would like to wish our town administrator, Michael Dennehy, and his family good luck and Godspeed on their vacation to Ireland for the next 2 weeks.
Wish
Please
I was
return, come back.
I'm booked both ways.
And I look forward to getting to know Paige Eppolito very, very well in the next 2 weeks. And I'd like to thank everyone, administrations, Board of Selectmen, past, going back, God knows how long. with respect to this Henry's project. It's finally coming down, it's starting, it's beginning, and there are innumerable people, too many to count. But one of our colleagues here on the board, Katie Conlon, has played a pivotal role in getting this thing squared away. She is the one that's most invested in this, and I know that it must be delightful for you to see this thing coming down. I think it's a win for the town. I think it's a great collective effort, and I look forward to the outcome. Thank you. That's all I have.
With that, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tony. I also want to thank Emily Martin, whom I've had the pleasure of working with for 3 years on this, past 3 years on this board. So Emily, for all your work on the minutes and all of the agendas and all of the different projects that you've worked on in the office and all the help you've given us, and me in particular, I want to thank you very much. And we're going to miss you, but I'm glad you're moving on to something that is really going to be fulfilling and career fulfilling, and I know it's something you're really going to enjoy. So I'm very happy for you, but we're going to miss you at the same time. And I wanted to thank the town administrator and Joe Prondek, the building inspector, for all their work on the Henry's project. The last few, I was going to say weeks, but I think it's months, there's been so much back and forth with the MBTA, and as things kind of ebbed and flowed, I think the big constant in it has been Mike Dennehy and Joe Prondek, really working with the T, working with the Connollys, trying to get all of this moving on the demolition. So thank you to Mike and to Joe for all of their efforts and hard work.
True team effort.
And when you come back from Ireland, it'll be gone. It won't even be, it'll be gone when you come.
I'll get that back just in time for the
Just in time for
trolley.
the
For the T, yes, for the trolley
And the
diversion.
big piece of the building to come down.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
thank you also to Tony for his efforts on the National Grid letter. And thank you for putting that together for Tony and for our consideration.
I'm confident that they're going to work this out. Okay. Citizen speak response, I don't really have any, I noted everything that was said. Does anyone have anything tonight? Good? Okay. Future agenda items? You have anything? See you on the 27th. Are you back on the 20th? Are you going to be here on the 27th? Are we
Yeah,
gonna- Are you back?
I think we land at like 3:30, so,
We'll see.
unless there's
Are you-
traffic.
You going Norwegian, TF?
Norwegian, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That seems to be the way this summer. Hearing that, we have a motion to adjourn. Thank you all for your efforts, and enjoy what's left of the summer of 2018.
Good meeting, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, trying.
They giving them up?
Well, they're